Hello, everybody, and welcome to a very special Shark Week edition of Nerdstalgia. My name is Jay Black, and this is shark fin enthusiast Bill Ridgway. This week's episode is because to tie in with our very special Shark Week, we're going to do 1975's classic Jaws by Steven Speilberg, John Williams, Roy Scheider, Robert Shaw, and Richard Dreyfuss, who out of the gate, I got to say, I was just before we get to the movie proper at all, I had a very weird moment with my wife involving Richard Dreyfuss, because we're watching the movie. Richard Dreyfuss comes into the frame for the first time in the movie, and my wife goes, "Oh, who's that? He's hot."
To defend your wife, she did marry you.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
So of course Richard Dreyfuss probably he's got to be a 9 or a 10.
Well, am I a Richard Dreyfuss type?
It should make you feel good though.
No, it didn't. We got to get it out of the way up front. I mean, neither of us are going to say that this doesn't belong.
Right.
I mean, so this is an easy episode.
Classic.
We'll just talk about it, but let's just state off the bat. This was fantastic, and everyone should see it if you haven't seen it yet. A couple of things. If you don't know, it's about a small town called Amity, which means friendship, Bill.
Yes.
There's a shark attack right prior to July 4th. The Chief Brody, played by Roy Scheider. Is it Scheider or Snyder? Scheider. He wants to shut the beaches down, but the worst dressed mayor in America says no, we have to keep the beaches open.
His anchor jacket that he wore every day in this movie.
I got to tell you, there's one scene where they're on the beach and he's wearing like a candy striped, it's like a multicolored striped suit with a brown tie and a bright pink shirt, and I was like, yeah, I think I might want to wear that. I could see putting that on. It was a hot look. But the anchor suit, no one has ever looked good.
Did they film in the fall though? Because people were very overdressed in this movie.
Yeah, well, no, I think in the 70s everybody wore like 15 layers.
Suit to the beach.
They had to have pockets everywhere for cigarettes, because if it was 1975 and you were without a cigarette for under a second, it was considered an emergency. So he's. By the way, what was I going to say? I was going to say something about his suit. Oh, the anchor suit. The anchor suit he's wearing, have you ever seen on Amazon or whatever, they'll have those $99 suits for nerds who think they're going to get dressed up
like a Halloween thing, yeah.
Yeah, but it's always
David S. Pumpkins, Tom Hanks wearing
some jerkwads wearing that to the prom. I don't buy into this system. Remember we had a kid come with a top hat and tails?
Let's be honest, if you had gone to our prom,
yeah, I didn't go.
You would have worn that.
Do you know where I went? I went to Pink Floyd's Division Bell concert because I was a radical hippie, Bill. I don't think I belong in this country. I'm a radical hippie. So yeah, I went to Pink Floyd's Wall. But
True story.
I probably would have dressed. Yeah, I probably would have dressed in a suit that had a wall on it and said I feel oppressed by this high school system that we're in. But I feel like that suit was the 1970s equivalent of the novelty suit you buy off of Amazon to wear for, oh, it's my beach themed suit, honey, But okay, so it opens with a whole bunch of hippie teenagers smoking pot. I assume they were smoking marijuana.
They were drinking.
They were drinking, and I'm going to start by saying this. And I've said I'm going to start a lot, but I'm going to start by saying this. If the girl in the beginning hadn't decided to make the courtship a tease, she would still be alive today. I'm not victim blaming. I'm just saying that, they were already boyfriend and girlfriend, we find out. So, presumably they've had sex before.
I didn't think they were girlfriend and boyfriend.
Well, when Chief Brody was walking with him,
he did? Okay.
I felt like he mentioned it, because this is the first time I remember.
I thought when they were sitting there, he said something like, "What's your name again?" before she got up and ran.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, maybe
she might have to look.
Yeah, we might have to look that up. Either way, she was obviously just she wanted to have sex with him.
Right. Well, she was nude within what?
Within a
30 seconds of running.
But she did that thing where she was like, I'm going to make him work for it a little bit. I want to see if he'll go in the water with me. And then he's too drunk. He's like Seth MacFarlane on 9/11. Because he was too drunk, he didn't wake up to get on his plane, and he would have been on one of the 9/11 planes. This is more proof that me quitting drinking was maybe the worst thing I could have done to my safety. Because now I'm awake and I'm doing stuff.
So I'm wondering, you've had so many women throw themselves at you that you're unfamiliar with this tease game?
When women want it from me, Bill.
Right, they don't. Okay.
No, that's never happened once. Okay. But yeah, the problem is, she's like, oh no, I'm gonna make him work for it. I'm gonna go swim. He's too drunk, he lays down, goes to sleep. She's instantly eaten by a shark. Now, I'm not saying if you're a young woman just to give it up, or I'm not saying if you're a young man, get drunk all the time. I'm just saying that had she given it up and had he not been drunk, it would have been a different story, Bill.
I think Jim might have to cut this part out.
Probably. Yeah, Jim's already knocking his head.
The heavy sexual predator vibes are right.
Yeah.
You licked your lip 3 times while you told that story, by the way. It made me a little uncomfortable.
I'm going to tell you this. I might accidentally get elected president if this airs. People will be like, I like what that Jay Black says about it. All right, so girl goes out, gets eaten. Right. Chief Brody, who's from New York, and he's new to Amity, and they sort of say to her, like it says to his wife, "You'll never be an islander. You weren't born here." And I always want to say this to like people who live in like little communities like that. Like, who gives a crap? Like, you make it a big deal. Like, you'll never be an islander. Oh, I'll never get to live on your crappy island that only comes life 2 months out of every year. Like, I don't want to be part of your stupid system. That's what I say. Actually, Jim, it might be a good idea to cut to.
Did you go somewhere and they told you you're going to be part of something?
Jim, cut to Lonely Island. I threw it on the ground. I don't want to be a part of your system. So they don't shut the beach down, even though Brody wants to shut the beach down.
Well, you have to have the corrupt official that is worried about profits, even though like you have like a dead teenage girl at this point. That shows you before the internet that you could even like brush that under the rug.
Yeah.
Like, where nobody's like.
They didn't even alert the Coast Guard.
No,
like it was just back in the 70s, you could die and it could literally go like 8 months before anybody was like, hey, what happened to Bill?
Where's he been?
What's going on? Now, I don't know what it says about where I've come to in my life that I was kind of agreeing with the mayor. Even knowing what was coming next, I was like, well, you can't shut it down for the whole season. These people...
What's the odds the shark's going to come right back there again?
I don't want to say, like, what was the girl wearing? I mean, she knew this was a bad part of the sea.
You would have thought that with the 70s too. That could have gone a little darker, with what was more acceptable or what they,
Well, that was the other thing is that it's never have I been...
The guy was with frat guy wearing like the collared shirt.
Right.
It could have gone very dark. I mean,
Well, even Chief
Brody behind the dunes, like
even
before.
Chief Brody, when he was walking with the guy, he was like, "Well, listen, I called you, so you know I wasn't involved." And it was like, you felt like Chief
Brody came
Brody
from a good family.
Yeah, Chief Brody was about to go like, "Listen, I don't want to endanger your lacrosse scholarship, so." Whatever you did.
You'll be back at Duke in the fall.
We gotta keep that, Jim. Come on. We don't want Dukies watching this channel anyway. They keep the beach open, and the world's oldest mom.
Yeah.
The mom of the boy who gets eaten when I keep saying Chef Brody, but when Chief Brody. Is like he's like all paranoid. He's looking around. He's like, which again, what's he gonna do? Like he's like, I gotta stay vigilant.
Because this entire 8-mile stretch of beaches,
a shark.
I'm within that 100-yard range of where he's gonna show up again. Probably.
Yeah. What is he gonna? Is he gonna blow a whistle and say like, "Hey, shark, get away"?
Right.
So the boy comes to his mom, and there is so much 1970s parenting going on in this show. It's amazing.
I will go into that because that's one of my biggest. Like, I was shocked at how.
Right.
Just like a 3-year-old is just like, have you seen my son? Like,
yeah.
Lorraine Gray is maybe the worst pairing I've seen in a movie since Mommy Dearest.
Right.
Like, as far as just having no.
But 1975.
The sharks killed all these people, and they're like hanging out on the dock, and.
But no one ever you can't find articles in 1975 where the reviewers were going, "I can't believe this terrible mother." So we have to imagine that was just like, well, of course, you can't.
You can't expect to watch your child the entire time he's out in public.
Chief Brody and his wife want to get drunk and have sex. With no idea where their children are as night is falling on their small Nantucket town. That's just the way it was in 1975. So the boy goes up to the mom, who, I don't want to disparage this woman's looks because maybe she's 26 and just has a lot of sun damage, but I fully thought that was the grandmother of the boy.
Maybe that's just what like a 35-year-old looked like back then, compared to like the moms you see nowadays. You know, where it's a little bit different.
Where they take care of themselves.
Yeah,
there's a lot of yoga moms now.
Right.
And
so it's.
I will say that one of the things that I loved about this movie, as a relatively unattractive person, is that there is not a good-looking person to be found in all of
The
Jaws.
70s were rough, man, right?
Well, but that's the thing.
You can't do that much cigarette smoking and everything else. And
but it's a Hollywood movie, so
well, I read that most of the people were locals.
Oh, really?
So it wasn't like a lot of them weren't cast. Even that deputy that he kept going to.
All right.
I'm like, dude, this guy's pretty terrible at acting. He was like a local guy.
I had no idea.
So
that's
yeah,
cool.
so that's why.
So
I
that's
think
just how they all
leveled
looked.
the crowd out. Yeah.
But if you think about it, like
it wasn't Baywatch.
When Richard Dreyfuss shows up, when Hooper shows up, they keep referring to him as young man. Like, young man, could you please stand aside? Who is this young man from the Oceanographic Institute? He's like 38.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So I think in the 70s, everything was older. Like, you didn't get to do stuff until you were actually like an adult with like lines on your face and like maybe a couple of prison stints in your history.
Right.
Like Roy Scheider is the center of this movie, and he's in his mid-40s, or at least he looks like he's in his mid-40s.
I think he was like exactly our age.
Right. He looks it, right? He doesn't look like he looks like he's been weathered. And, Robert Shaw, man, he looks like he's 4 weeks away from dying at any given point.
How old was he in that? Yeah, I was wondering that too.
I think he was like early 50s, but he really did die of alcoholism like shortly thereafter. Like, allegedly, if the Shaw family.
Right. Somebody.
I don't want the Shaw estate to come and sue us. But I mean, the three of them who form the sort of emotional center of the movie, I had forgotten we only spend like 45 minutes in Amity before they go off on their fishing adventure.
And that's the bulk of the
this is like the last hour of the movie is them on the Orca going out and hunting sharks. And I got to tell you, there was a couple of music cues that my wife found very weird because they were playing like it sounded like cut music from Pan, like what was the Hook, from like it was like this jaunty kind of sea adventure movie where you expect Jaws to be like a horror movie almost, and the first hour really is a horror movie, but the second hour I loved it. It was like this adventure movie with these three disparate guys hanging out on a boat, getting to be friends, like. Learning to chum. How would you shovel some of this shit? We got to beep that. But like that was a great scene where the Jaws pops up. It was fantastic. The last hour of the movie was absolutely a blast. The where they're in the kitchen.
Oh, and Robert Shaw or Quint talks about the being on the. I like they threw in that U.S. Indianapolis story. Based on. What really happened. So.
Right. So I actually have a little info about this because if you watch the documentary about like the 1970s, I think it actually might have been the Spielberg documentary on HBO. They talk about how they didn't have a speech for that like particular thing, and they couldn't figure it out with the screenwriter. So they called John Milnes, who you might know is the guy who wrote Apocalypse Now and also wrote and directed Red Dawn. Okay. And he's a guy who, whenever he got hired to write a movie, he wouldn't do it unless they got him a gun. Like he was very he leaned very right. He was a very interesting character, right? And he wrote Conan the Barbarian, I believe.
Really?
Yeah,
okay.
He's a very interesting guy. And he was to the right of all of those guys. But they all thought he was like the genius of the group. Like this is Lucas, Spielberg, Francis Ford Coppola, Martin Scorsese. Of those guys, they all thought John Milnes was like above them. So they called him up in the middle of the night and they were like, hey John, we can't figure out this scene. It's Quint, he needs to have something to say. So he goes, all right, give me a minute. He hangs up the phone, he calls him back like a half hour later, and he dictates that speech to them. And they write it down, and that's what Robert Shaw does the next day, like kind of written in a night by John Milnes. And it's one of the great soliloquies, or monologues of movie history. Black eyes, doll's eyes, they got no soul. That's actually the way you look.
Again, your impersonations
they're dead on.
They're just spot on.
Black eyes, dead like a doll's eyes. But that's just like a great bonding scene.
Yeah.
And I've never felt closer to
comparing their scars.
I've never felt closer to a character more than I have Roy Scheider's character when he had no scars to share. Because I could just see myself out there just looking around like, well, I stubbed the toe real bad.
I burned myself on a Hot Pocket one time. You might still be able to see it
I still have a blister on my tongue. I'd like to actually see a prequel movie about the girl who broke Hooper's heart. Where he
Oh.
goes, see this? Nothing's worse than right here. Or is it Marianne something or
right.
other broke my heart? But okay, so let's talk about the time with the shark. I guess it's 2 nights that they're there.
Yeah.
You know, and Quint very quickly goes full Ahab. You know,
Right, smashing the radio.
Right.
So they can't call for help.
Which again, let's talk about it first. Like, hey, insane people. Before
I
you
think
do the
I think they
insane
handled
thing-
him way too, like, okay about it. Like,
Yeah. Oh
you
yeah.
know,
Well, I guess what are you gonna do? He's the only one who knows how to like
Right.
get them home.
That's true.
Maybe that's the lesson of Jaws. Like, you can't do anything about sharks, but like, if there's an obviously unstable person who wants to bring you on a boat, say no.
Right.
Just always, you know what? Give him the 10,000 and say, you go do this.
I do love the scene when he first shows up and you just hear him doing the chalkboard scratch.
Oh yeah, it's awesome.
Just to let people know that he's like, you know, and you're like, oh, this guy's complete. Let's listen to hear what this guy has
right,
to say.
this
you know,
lunatic.
at
Well,
this,
they all know
town
him.
meeting.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, here's the question: when he pulls his fingers across the blackboard, what's on the blackboard is a cartoon drawing of a shark, right? Like a kind of goofy, like Hanna-Barbera-esque shark picture. Did Quint draw that? Or was that there when he got there? Was some young man like, oh, I'll show everybody, I'll draw this cartoon shark because
I can't imagine Quint is drawing cartoon sharks.
Right.
But, you know.
But I'd love to
My
see.
hunch says that. I don't know if you know.
I get interested in stuff like this, and if there was a documentary on the DVD that was like, who was the person who drew that shark? I'd watch it. 45 minutes of like exploring.
You find like this hidden interview with Robert Shaw. He's like, I drew that shark 27 times before I really nailed it. I think.
Right. I did like sort of the subtle characterizations of, like, for instance, Roy Scheider hates the water, and I couldn't figure out when I was a kid why he would go with them. But it seems like as a direct result of World's Oldest Mom slapping him across the face and saying, you could have stopped this. And by the way, people in the 70s, or at least movie characters, handle blame a lot better than me, because I would have been like, whoa, no. Here's the mayor. Go talk to him. He was the one involved. Instead, he just like took it.
Or how about you? You knew about it and you said, don't go too far, and he went out anyway.
Yeah.
Like,
Hey, lady,
a lot of...
I guess your Nora Roberts was more important than your son's life. Which, by the way, did you have him at 106? Like, come on. That kid would have never survived with your bad genes. So... There's another little part in when the wife is packing him up, and she makes a specific line. She says, "By the way, I packed your spare glasses," right? And then during like one of the things that happens on the boat, he loses his glasses, and I was like, "Oh my God, this is like such a little hidden Easter egg. He's gonna definitely go open up his pack and get the spare glasses that his wife gave him," but he didn't. He never did that. Instead, he just left his glasses off and shot the shark without his glasses, which, again, a little unrealistic. But my thinking was they should do, like, Jaws 2 should have opened with her still giving him crap about, like, I can't believe I packed you the glasses. You couldn't just take a second to go, and why do I even bother? Chief Brody.
I think she didn't seem to care about too much other than getting drunk.
Yeah.
Not watching her children.
In the book, she has an affair with Hooper.
Yeah, I read the book, the Peter Benchley book.
Yeah, you read that book?
Yeah, I mean years and years ago.
Why did she have the affair with Hooper? Is it like my wife? She couldn't resist Richard Dreyfuss's beautiful looks?
I think that changes that. I don't remember it being that far out of place when I read it, but it must be now because those guys going out there, that camaraderie, like you spoke of earlier, is kind of why that worked.
Right.
But if that had been like an underlying issue, I think it would have been weird.
You got to cut that out. I guess, though, in like 1975, like...
They were just sharing their wives.
Yeah, like if your wife has sex with like a wandering oceanographer, you just go like, well, what are you going to do?
He'll be out of town next week.
I mean, come on.
Right, I can't begrudge her that. And it's a young Richard Dreyfuss.
Right, I'm going to drink half a bottle of whiskey and smoke 700 cigarettes. I'll be dead in a week anyway. What do I care?
Your wife clearly would have run off with him at this point.
Oh, yeah. No, what? But you know what? I would have been okay with that because it would have been like, he'll provide you the kind of life I never can, which will just be like going on boats in Nantucket. You know me, Bill.
That's right.
I don't go on boats in Nantucket.
Not much of an adventure, but that's fine.
No. In fact, me coming here to film this today, I'm going to be wiped for a week. Okay, so they have an idea. They're going to go, and after the ship is nearly destroyed by like this superhero shark, this 25-footer who can take barrels down
Which
under the
I
ocean.
think held up well for me.
Oh, all of that held up extremely well.
Like the underwater shots, you see it moving, I was like, ugh, like it made you feel like maybe some of the close-ups were a little bit. I mean, as for a 43-year-old movie, I thought it was really still held up because they didn't. I mean, there's no CGI. They did a mechanical shark.
Well, you know, there's a couple of things that comes out of that where you go like, maybe having flawless CGI, and like, I don't want to be one of those people that are like, oh no, man. Back in the day, I mean, my son just got a record player, and I don't want to be that hipster that goes like, no, it was better back then. But like, two things had to happen. One, they had to be like parsimonious with how they handled the shark. Like they could only dole that out just a little bit at a time, which made each of the times it popped out
saw 'em that much more.
Huge.
Yeah.
And secondly, if you don't have a shark, you have to have like characters that you want to spend time with. And like Hooper, Brody, and Quint are so drawn, like they're drawn so perfectly that their interaction, like that night where they do the comparing the scars and the Indianapolis story, I could have watched 2 hours of that and been okay with it.
Yeah, you made me think like today if you said, oh, we're going to make a shark movie, but the shark's only going to be on screen for like an eight total minutes of the movie or whatever, people would be bored, or like it wouldn't be enough. It would have to be so over the top.
Well, it'd have to be the Meg.
I didn't see the Meg, but I know that's got to be ridiculous.
Oh, hang on. There's two things that I love about the Meg. It is ridiculous.
Okay,
it's
perfect.
basically Jaws if Jaws was 500 feet long, if Jaws was an island and Jason Statham was Chief Brody, who actually at one point punches the shark. It's the greatest thing. But the other thing is, even in a movie about a 500-foot shark or whatever the megalodon was, it was just goofy. It didn't even look like it could exist on the planet. There's a scene.
Look and feed that thing, yeah.
It's my least favorite thing in any movie where Jason Statham is his life has fallen apart. So now he's moved to like this like Asian country where he's an alcoholic and all he does is like drink beer all day and he doesn't eat, like he's all like messed up. But like he takes his shirt off and he's still perfectly cut as if he's been doing nothing but keto for the last.
The magic of movies. Yeah, they want you to think like, you know.
But it just drives me nuts. Like at least make him look like Fat Thor. Like at least give me the Fat Thor. And he's like, I got to get into playing shape.
That was the least realistic thing about that movie to you?
More unrealistic than the Megalodon
Really?
was the fact that someone could spend 3 years drinking nothing but Asian beer and walk out still perfectly cut. Very frustrating. Bill, I'm trying to lose weight. So anytime I see somebody on film consuming calories and still being cut, I get very upset. But we had to switch to the Meg because there's nothing to talk about really about this except it's so good you have to go see it.
The only thing that was kind of funny to me was like how heavy-handed they were about like the tank blowing up beforehand to foreshadow.
Oh, the foreshadow.
What do you do? Knocking like they barely bump into it. Like the tank falls over and they act like it's a something that's a hair trigger.
I will say this though, you and I thought it was heavy-handed.
Right.
My wife was like, huh. I guess that's why they talked about it earlier. Like it was like for my wife, it like was a perfect moment of like, huh.
Literally, but it's not like a quick they sit there and talk about it. Did I tell you how much this thing can explode? Like they just kept going on about it. Like
let me give
this
you,
could be really dangerous.
Let me give you an idea.
All right, dude, I get it.
Let's say an animal of some sort had this in its body and it exploded. That animal would die no matter how big or strong it is.
Clearly.
How far were they away from land they could kick home with the current?
By the time, they were heading back to the island at that point anyway.
Yeah.
Well, I guess you do see them through the credits kind of getting the island. It would be funny if you never see them kind of get there
They just
and
drown.
then nobody finds out about them like later on.
Well, maybe it was the 70s where they were like, you know what? Let's not go home.
Yeah.
They
just start paddling in the direction.
Yeah, the chief is like, listen, my wife is having sex with oceanographers, and my kids, they're pretty much grown. One's 11, the other's 3. Yeah. I'm not even sure what their names are. Maybe start a new life for ourselves. Maybe they go to New York and they start disco. Yeah. And Saturday Night Fever is an unofficial sequel to Jaws. That would be my theory. All right, so we said at the beginning, this is going to be one that we already know is great.
Classic.
It's both of us will keep that in our brain. I don't know about Jaws 2, 3, 4. I think none of them can stay in. No. Jaws 3.
I don't think there's even an average one in that bunch. I think they're all stinkers.
No, Jaws 3 was kind of cool only because both of them, like it's the two sons are now grown up and one of them's Dennis Quaid and they both work at SeaWorld. Because I guess whenever you have like extreme trauma in your youth, because at that point they've had 2 terrible shark attacks that have killed all of their friends, that like, I guess I'll work with sharks at SeaWorld now. Anyway, go see Jaws if you haven't already.
Definitely.
We can't recommend it highly enough. And when you're not watching Jaws, watch the other episodes of Nerdstalgia. They're all available right here on Exit 19. And until next week, I'm Jay Black, and this is
Bill Ridgway.
You got to put something in. I'm comedian Jay Black. Let's see.
Well, the guy called me Nerdmaster, but I don't want to be a Nerdmaster because I'm a couple credits shy of my Nerdmaster's degree.
Okay, yeah.
I'm like that stripper that doesn't have a degree
You're
yet.
a nerd bachelor.
Right. So.
You've got your nerd bachelors of arts. Come join us next week for more of what this is.
Yeah.